Hello guys and welcome to our top 5 worst factions in Medieval 2 Total War Stainless Steel mod. We've already did top 5 factions in Medieval 2 Total War Stainless Steel, and you guys requested that you want to see top 5 worst factions. So I would also recommend you guys to visit that video, as well as it might give you a full picture of this video as well and you might enjoy it. One spoiler alert for this video is that all of the factions which are here on the list are basically there because of their starting position and because of all of the efforts, additional effort which you need to put in to make it work when compared to other factions which basically don't require any effort or little effort to make them work. And some of these factions have a really good rosters which you can use, but because of the position and start, they are lacking any possibilities of exploiting that. So if you guys will enjoy in this video, don't forget to subscribe and like, as we are just starting with the channel, and let's jump in right now. Faction number 5 on our list is Kiev. So out of all of the factions on this list, Kiev has the best position in my opinion, because you have several rebel settlements which you can go for, and you have a weak and easily to destroy Lithuanians up in the north. But as soon as you are done with dealing with Lithuanians and dealing with these pesky rebel factions, that's it. All of the other factions which you are going to encounter are better than you, they are stronger than you, and they have a better start than you. So regarding the position, Kievan Rus has a good position to start with. However, after that start, you basically have a tough time pushing into Europe through over here through these Hungarians. It's easier for players who have experience, but if Hungarians are decent enough and you play on hard difficulty, it will be really harder for you to push. And basically that's it regarding their position. Their economy at the start, they have a profit of 2000, and they start with a big city here with Kiev. They have one more city and they have one castle. So their economy can be developed. They have a really developed Kiev for their capital. And they can grab these settlements over here in Black Sea, which will give them access to the ports. And if they push for Kaffa, that can give them even more wealth, because then they can make this huge network with these port cities. But their economy is pretty much locked at the beginning until they develop their trading networks and they capture more cities. So even their economy is not the best economy which you can hope for and you can get at the start. And to top everything up with the Kiev is that their army is really bad in my opinion. They cannot, and in any case, shape, form, circumstance, any way and how compete with any of the Western armies, which they will pretty much encounter if they decide to conquer West, to expand to more rich areas of the map. So their armies are bad. They have a really bad cavalry. So if we go over here and check for the citadels, the best cavalry they have is heavy boyars, and their defense is 19. So if they encounter late game feudal knights are going to eat them, so they don't have a chance against them. And to top it off, heavy boyars you get these a little bit later than the Western armies would get their feudal knights. And also their general's bodyguard is 23 defense only and 5 attack. When compared to late game generals which have 32 armor, it's super weak. Even though they have bad cav, they have even worse spearmen. So let's take a look over here, guys. If we go to the armory, the best spearmen they have are these eastern spearmen, which are giving them 13 total defense. that is so bad. That is unbelievably bad. You will have better spearmen as basic spearmen late game for Western armies with 14 defenses. Even though the Ottomans, sorry, the Seljuks have better spearmen than they have. One highlight though is that they have Scandinavian guards, which are pretty much like Varangians in a way, but bad Varangians. They're even weaker than the Janissaries. Janissaries have higher defense than they do, so they would probably win. But they are the highlight of this faction, and also we can mention that they have a mounted archers. So they have some mounted archers which can run around and try to do some stuff. However, when compared with other heavy archers which other factions have, their missile attack is lower, so they will not do that much as mounted archers. They can be pretty easily countered by regular archers. Yeah, I mean, that's basically Kievan Rus. They have a really weak army, a really dependent economy on the conquest, which they will need to do early and fast in order to try to generate that trading network. And their position is decent compared to other factions on this list, which we will go over. Next faction on our list is Lithuania. So we just mentioned Lithuania while we were going over our Kievan faction. So what is happening with Lithuania? Well, they are a small faction with a really weak army surrounded by big factions which have more army, more money, and stronger army at the start of the game. So Lithuania starts at a really, really bad spot. And to top it all off, they are pagans. So Lithuanians will start as a pagan faction in the game, which will further deteriorate diplomatic relations with their neighbors. So they have Catholics on the north and on the west, and they have Orthodox on the east, and they are sole pagans left here. So their position is tough at the beginning. One chance they have is to take out the Teutonic Order in the north and then try to push maybe into Poland. I wouldn't try to push further east, even though they might attack you first, but if you try to make a good relations with them, they might not go to war with you, because these are the areas which are not that rich when compared with the western areas in the game, and they are much closer, so your connections and your troop movement will be much easier if you go west. That's my opinion, at least. You don't have any ports, so trying to go for the Teutonic Order might be a good idea, because then you will have access to the port, which will bring you even more money. You also start with a decent income. However, you start with basically no armies, and the things which you have are really pathetic. This Grand Master and his Teutonic Order's knights can basically just move in and eat you alive. And let's not forget that you have these rebels here in territories for the Teutonic Orders, which have a really good stack, and trying to capture Riga and Palanga can be difficult if these guys decide to attack you while you're moving there. So you see they have two armies here, which can be toughy. So they start with 2 cities and 1 castle. They're really close, which is good. Economy is okay. You can start investing early on in building the farmings and trying developing your cities as fast as possible. But besides that, you don't have much of a choice early on, and you are surrounded by huge enemies, and your economy isn't that great. And as soon as you start building armies, it will deteriorate even more. Then we come to the army. So in my opinion, Lithuanian army late game is better than Kievan army. However, those are super late game troops. So if we go over here and we go to inspect their armies, so we go to the citadels, they have Lithuanian noble cavalry, which are weak, but they can kind of pretend and they can try to act like light and medium cavalry. They have noble infantry, which is decent infantry. However, a late game, they cannot compete with the Western armies. So look at this, 9 attack, 7 defense. Their attack is good. The attack is good, and they frighten nearby enemy infantry. However, their defense is pathetic. And to top it all off, regarding the weakness of their armies, look at their generals' bodyguards. 19 defenses. They will be shredded by Western armies completely. One thing which I will mention though is that if we go over their units now and we check their noble sons cavalry and Lithuanian noble sons, we see that they have basic spearman-like and basic infantry defenses and attack. However, they have javelins which they can throw. So in a fight, if it is going to happen, you can basically try to bombard them with few of these shots and give you some head start when you charge into them. I have to mention though that their late game armies are stronger than Kievan, and it is because basically these two Lithuanian regular swordsmen and regular spearmen. These guys, the swordsmen, have a really decent, a really good defense, which can compete with the Western armies, and regular spearmen are really good with 17 defenses, so they can hold their ground really, really well. And also we can say that they have a good horses late game, which can be really useful. Again, Lithuanian regular cavalry, which has 17 defenses, have 7 attack. It's not the best one, but it is usable. It can be usable when you go to the late game. Regarding their archers aren't that great, so they are decent archers. They don't have good missile attack, so yeah, I mean, and their defense isn't the greatest. They have Lettish crossbowmen with 12 defense, which is the best thing they can get. But besides that, Lithuania, surrounded by enemies, you are pagan, you have weak early armies, and you have strong enemies all around which you need to attack in order to prosper and not to die. So that is our number 4 spot. On number 3 spot on our list are Cumans. So this faction is, you have to be mad in order to play this faction competitively, but it can be a fun faction to play if you want to kind of make a second horde which is not Mongolian or Timurid, so you can make a Tatar horde out of them. So basically the highlight of this faction are horse archers. These guys basically produce horse archers from their cities as well, from their barracks. So this is the only thing they have. So here we are going in a really opposite way when speaking of them. I started by mentioning the army, so let's inspect. Let me just show you guys. So if we go to their castle, to their citadels, they have a really, really weak cav, and they only have mounted archers. Their mounted archers are good though. They have a really good missile attack. When you compare this to the Lithuanian cav, they have their archers, they have double as much missile attack compared to them. Their bodyguards are the weakest ones I saw so far. 15 defenses, it's unbelievable. They are the weakest ones. Their archers are also decent. They have 16 defenses. They can compete with the Turkish heavy archers, which is really it's top. They have really good archers, but it ends with that. That is basically it. Let me just show you guys the barracks quickly here when I spoke about that. So Kasogis, I mean, what the hell are these? Like peasants? Not important. Cuman, this one, the Cuman militia. They have decent defense and they have average missile attack. But when you compare these guys from city, so basically from the city garrisons, their archers are better than archers which some faction can boast from the citadels, from the ranges there. So they are decent. And as I said, Cuman horse militia, these are basically horses which you can recruit from the cities. They are weak and pathetic, but again, they are really, really fast. So, and they give that flavor to them. When we go further into the barracks for the castle, the only thing which they can say they have is dismounted Kegan Druzhina with 17 defenses. It is late game. It is really good for spearmen. However, they have low attack, and this is the best thing they have. If they are going to meet any other melee infantry, these guys will be decimated completely. And they have Tatar foot lancers, which are super weak. They are weaker than Seljuk spear militia, spear infantry. So they are not worthy with their infantry at all. Let's just go over the stables quickly, just to show you guys. So they have mounted Druzhina. So basically this is like their general's bodyguard. They have mounted Yasis, so these are decent horse archers, as we mentioned, and they have Tatar lancers, which are really, really weak. So their army is basically horse archers. They have decent horse archers, and that is it. They don't have anything. So I would still rate these guys higher than Lithuanians and Kievian Rus with their army, just because of those decent horse archers which they have. And in my opinion, and I advocate that horse archers are, one horse archer is valuable like 2 troops. You will go spank them with the arrows, and then you will turn around and charge them. And if you have horse archers which have a really decent armor, really decent missile attack, and on top of that, if you can get some attack, that's really, really good. Now let's go over the positions which Cuman starts at. So they are basically starting in the edge of the world. They cannot be attacked from the east, besides Mongols, which will start at the start of the game. So my advice is that you guys should try and get alliance with them at all cost. So priority number 1 is to send a diplomat to Mongols, try to get alliance with them, and that is really important. You are also a pagan faction at the start of the game, so you need to worry about that as well. There are 2 ways you can expand. One is further west, try to capture these rebel cities before Kievians and before the Novgorod will, and then go after these 2 because they are weak as well. So you have a wider area you can expand than you have with the Kiev and with the Lithuania at the start. So by the time you reach the western front, you reach the western factions, you will already conquer whole of the east, which will give you a good base. But they are really weak. Late game, you will not compete, you only have horse archers, and that's basically it. And your position is bad as well. So you can't be like the Ottomans can and the Seljuks can, where they have similar army to you, still stronger than you, but they are focusing on horses as well and archers, and they have stronger armies than you. On top of that, they have a really much better position than you. The only thing which they have worse than you is the starting economy, but besides that, when they do proper 10 turns properly, they will have a godlike economy. So Number 3, in my opinion, are the Cumans. They start with big kingdom, weak armies, and they rely on horse archers. That's basically it for the Cumans. Number 2 is everybody's favorite Byzantine Eastern Roman Empire. This faction in a late game is gutted. In early campaign, they can compete and they are good, but in late game, the Byzantines start in second worst position in the game. The only reason why you are starting in a second worst position in the start of the game, spoilers alert, is that the guys who are surrounding you are not gang banging you from turn 1, so you have a chance. So Byzantines, oh my, they are really flavorful faction to play. However, in late campaign, you pretty much lost all of your big cities. The only city which you have, which is not a big city, it's, I mean, let's say it's a big city, but Constantinople, Thessaloniki, and Athens are huge cities, and they have much more wealth than Nicaea will. So you start with really weak position, surrounded by rebel factions which are filled to the top with infantry, archers, cavalry, with which you will hardly compete, just because of the situation which you are finding yourself in. So you start surrounded by the Fourth Crusade remnants rebels, and on the east you have Turks, which are already starting with an army near your capital. They are weak spear militias, but them attacking you can defeat them with this small force. But it is a problem because they will impact your economy, they will impact the forces you have. These troops which you have are the best troops you can get, period, in the game. You cannot get any stronger troops than these later on, besides one troop which I will go over, but basically these are the best troops you can get in the game. And if you are going to waste these elite troops which you desperately need to retake your old properties on these pesky little spear militias which basically cost nothing and are here to harass, plus they have horse archers and archers, it is problematic. So you basically need to play defensive against the Seljuks until you grab your old empire over here, and then you can decide maybe to go and push against these guys. Yeah, I mean, you start in a really bad position. All of your prime settlements are taken away. The only way to expand are inwards towards the Balkans and towards Western countries, which will eat you alive late game. And on the east you have the Seljuks, which, if they are good, can pose a great threat to you. So all in all, in a bad spot. Regarding the starting economy of the Byzantines, it's even worse than their starting position. You start with a really pathetic income, which is not allowing you to further develop or recruit some better troops, which you can push and try to retake your old settlements. Economy, until you grab Constantinople, in my opinion, in Athens, is bad for you as a faction. But if you can manage to get Constantinople, Adrianople, Thessaloniki, Athens, and Corinth, so basically your old settlements, you will boom. Even if you only manage to grab Constantinople, you will really feel it. If you sack it back, sack your own city and take it back, you will have more than enough funds to really put that money and fund new conquest of other settlements which have been taken away from you guys. So economy is bad, however it can be godlike if you have luck and if you are a really good player and you manage to take back Constantinople, Athens and Thessaloniki at the start of the game. So you are in a bad position. But even if you are lucky and good player, it's something which is really hard to do, and it is something which will have a long consequence even after you grab it, because the only way you can grab Constantinople is if these guys would go out to raid somewhere and you sneak a cannon or trebuchet and you grab the Constantinople from them, but they will still be there. You have to deal with them. While on the other hand, you have Turks, which will slowly start to encourage on your old starting position, and you will have the goddamn Hungarians. So in order to build the economy for your faction, you need to be aggressive, smart, and lucky at the start, and then you have to hope that your neighbors will not instantly gangbang. At one point they will, but hope that they will not do it instantly. And that's basically your economy. You have to hope you will not get gangbanged. So, you have bad position, you have bad economy, which will really rely on you having that luck at the start with conquering and moving and working with that position. Your army, on the other hand, is really good early game army, but after that your late game armies are worse than Western armies, and they are twice as expensive. So the highlights which you can get from your armies are basically mercenaries. So you can make a mercenary barrack, and the best things which you can get as a faction are from these guys. So this is the best, one of the best infantrymen you can get, which are these Alamanois. Yeah, I said it correctly. So these guys are basically like feudal knights for the Western armies. You can get Latinkos, which are decent cavalry. They are not the best. They have 17 defenses, so you can have better feudal knights than these guys, but they are the best things you can get as a faction. And you can get these, I will not even try, horse archers, which have a really good defense. So these are really good horse archers. So the highlight would be these horse archers and these mercenaries. However, check the upkeep cost, guys. You tell me, are these guys really, really good? And are these guys good enough for the price which they are asking for? So almost 800 ducats for this, in my opinion, is not worth it. So basically, you start with decent early troops, but late game you will not be able to compete because your troops will be twice as expensive when compared to the Western armies, and they will be weaker than they would be. So the only thing you have are those horse archers, which are good. And if we go over here and we check the things which you can recruit from your own castles, are these pronoriaries, which are good. They are decent, and look at this, they cost less and they have better stats than those Latin crosses which we saw. The general's bodyguards are really good. So these are good bodyguards which you will have. They are the best bodyguards which you will have out of all of the factions on this list, but still they will be lower than the Western generals, because the Western generals will have 32 defenses compared with the bodyguards which you will have as the Byzantines, and also you have a lower attack than they will, so bad luck there. So if we check the barracks over here, we see these are the things which I'm telling you guys. Look at this. Their swordsmen have 17 defenses, and these are the things which you will get from the armories, from the castles. You have spearmen, 15 defenses. These are decent because you will have these early on. So basically all of these, so you have swordsmen and you have these Skuta boys, which you start with, and they are basically the biggest thing you have. One good thing regarding your army as well is that the majority of their defense comes from shield. So basically, if you face your opponents frontally, you will be good. If they attack you from behind or flank, these guys will be melted because the shield is the biggest thing which you have. Let's go quickly over the range as well. So regarding the ranges, you have a really decent archers as well, with decent missile attack and decent defense. However, they will not be able to compete with the Seljuk archers, or for that matter the Cuman archers as well. So your archers are decent, but they are not the ones you need to rely on heavily, because they will not do any miracles for you. So these are the Byzantines. They start gutted. Their settlements are occupied by really godlike armies when you compare them with your armies which you have. You start with weak economy which cannot sustain any new troops which you desperately need to conquer any new lands. And to top it all off, you start with basically no army, and you start in a really weak spot where your armies are useful early on, but you cannot use them because you don't have money, or you will be sending them into a suicide missions early on to try to grab old settlements. So these are the Byzantines. Some people love them, but it is tough to play with them in a late Euro campaign. So, worst faction to play as in this game are Khwarezmians. And trust me, it is not because of their army. As you guys know, and as you guys can see as well, you are basically starting in a war against the Golden Horde, or you are starting in a war against the Mongols. There is no chance that you will keep these settlements early on, or maybe even this one, against the Mongols. It is possible. I am lying to you. It is possible, especially because Legend of Total War did it. But it is something which is super tough, and it is taking so much of your time that it is unnecessarily to be done. You are starting in a decent position where you have access to these rich cities over here in the east. Well, it's a Middle East, but it's on your west, and you have access to go towards the Anatolia and go towards the Turks and go to the Holy Land. However, all of that is secondary, because you will have really tough time doing that, just because you will have Mongols on your back trying to nuke you from the start. So to recap, basically Khwarezmians start at the worst possible way, in a worst possible way, starting at a worst possible time, just because from the get-go Mongolians are at the gates with huge stacks. They already have 2 stacks at your 2 cities, which will go down 100%. They have few more stacks which will go forward deeper into your lands. You will need to go and push west to try to survive if you want, because you cannot stay here, because eventually they will cross and they will reach you. So imagine having Byzantines. That's why I said Byzantines are in a second spot, because Byzantines start with a really powerful opponents and powerful stacks, which they need to overcome. However, these stacks are not actively trying to grab Nicaea and your settlements. They are there to guard, to raid, to keep this. While over here you have stronger stacks actively trying to annihilate you. Speaking of the economy, you start with a minus as well. So if starting with enemies at the gates, basically ruining you, and by the way, they are going to kill your faction leader from the start. then you have a minus as well. So basically you start in an awful position with an economy which cannot upkeep the stuff you have at the start. So you will basically have to sacrifice something, either disband some troops, or either wait for these settlements and these armies inside to be captured, and then you will have at least some income because you will not have to pay the upkeep cost for it. So again, you can't speak of an economy in a land which is being ravaged, pillaged, and raided by the Mongols and invading armies. So the only way you can try to survive is to try to get some kind of a peace, if possible, with the Mongols, and try to push westwards and try to grab these settlements here and go for the Holy Lands, because this is the place where you can earn money. This is good area, you can make some money. However, the best money is here because you have ports, you have access to the more trade partners, and you have these really bunched up huge cities which you can develop and use. So, after we are done with the awful parts of this faction, let's start with the best part of this faction. I think that Khwarezmians have the best archers in the game, and they have one of the best horse archers in the game. So let me show you guys. And I also think that they have the best infantry out of all of the Muslim countries as well. If we go to the Citadel here, and just to check these troops which we get from the Citadel. So we have Khwarezmian noblemen, which start with 19 defenses and 12 armor. These guys are really decent for the upkeep which they require. They are not the best ones, but they are kind of a troops which are good shock troops, which can hold their own for some time. The bodyguards are decent. They are still weaker than the Western armies. Also, I mean, their noblemen, Khwarezmi noblemen, are also weaker, but the bodyguards are weaker. They have 27 defense. Majority of that comes from armor, which is a good thing. The best thing you can have as any troop in the game is to have armor. If you rely solely on shield as your defense, the shield can be negated, but armor cannot be easily negated. So that is what you get from the Citadel. However, that is not the best stuff which you will get. It is the Caliph stables. So Royal Guard cavalry is really good cav which you can get, and which can compete with the Western feudal knights with this 23 defense. It is really good, and if we compare just these guys with any cavalry from any other faction from this list, they are better. And to top it all up, look at this. Armored horse archers, 16 defenses. These are the most heavily armored horse archers you can get in the game. However, their missile attack is really weak. It is only 3, and they are slow just because they're armored so heavily. However, they have a long range which they can use. They also have Turkmen cavalry, which is the cavalry which you can get as the Seljuks, and they have Persian horse archers, which are in the middle of being heavily armored and having a really good missile attack. So these guys are really good. However, they still have a lower missile attack when compared, for example, with the Fairy cavalry or the cavalry which you have as a Cumans. Speaking of horse archers, obviously. So they have really good horses which they can utilize, and if they decide to go westwards with these rosters, the Western armies will not be able to compete with them, just because the horse archers are the best ones. This is second time or third time I'm mentioning this in the game. Okay, So we went over the horses. Now let's go over the archers. We said that they have the best archers in the game. In my opinion, the best roster which you can get. So basically, when you start from the weakest archers in your roster, they are stronger than any other archer you have as a Western faction. So 6 defense, 4 missile attack. It's more missile attack than others will have. Persian archers, guys. 13 defenses, 5 missile attack. Really, really decent. And you have heavy archers, which have 16 defense and 5 missile attack. These guys are weaker than the heavy archers of the Saracens, of the Seljuks. But what is different is that you have them off the get-go and you have a higher roster of these guys which you can get, which is good. That is good. You want to have a better roster where you can recruit earlier and a wider range of these, because when you are replenishing, if you have, let's say, 5 Ottoman infantry and you conquer a new castle, you cannot instantly retrain and replenish all of them. You have to go one by one, one by one. But if I have 5 archer units, 3 of those are heavy archers and 2 of those are, let's say, I don't know, the Persian archers, then I will be able to replenish twice as fast, because both of these will have a separate refresh rate for replenishment. So that is good. And let's speak about the barracks. Let's just go over the city barracks. So basically it is same like with any other Muslim faction. However, what is different is their castle. These are the highlights. Royal Guards, 1018, basically like Carolingians. These guys are really good. These are the best troops, infantry troops you can get as Muslim faction in the game. So these guys are really good, and look at the upkeep, only 300, man. This is really good. Their light infantry is decent as well, compared to other troops which you can get, which are having a prefix light. They have some Persian spearmen, which are like a generic spearmen you can get. They can get gulams. These guys are effective against armors because they use the maces and they have a decent defense. So basically they have a defense like spear sergeants. You have heavy spearmen, which have a really decent defense of 16. Armored spearmen are basically the same, and these guys are basically can be the backbone of their armies. So all in all, Khwarezmians are at number 1 only because they are being invaded by the Mongols. They have minus economy, but they have army. They have army, but you will not have enough time to utilize that army just because you're instantly getting gangbanged by the Mongolians. So Khwarezmians are taking number 1 as a worst faction just because of the uncertain future which you have. It's not that Khwarezmians are bad, it's just because of their future. I would rate them in S tier maybe as a faction if you would not have been instantly evaded by the Mongols. If you would have had a chance at least of play normally as them, then they would be, in my opinion, S tier faction. But this is destroying it completely. The only reason why. I hope that you guys enjoyed in this video. Don't forget to check our top 5 factions as well. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.